Oh, shit. Hang on. My dad might be streaming.
Can he not stream?
Oh, God. I don't know if he can't. Let me go find out.
Okay. What do I have to say to get this AI to trigger the interesting snippet? And that's a fact. Maybe that, I don't know.
Anyway, you are Doug. Do you want to give
Yes.
yourself an intro? Or should I try to whip out an intro from thin air?
Interesting. Yeah, let's see if you can whip out an intro, and maybe I can give my own one too.
Yeah, okay. All right. Doug. I don't know how much detail I want to go into here, but Doug, or even how to do this.
Okay, well maybe I'll start then.
Well, I could just throw some buzzwords out, maybe. We could say
Oh yeah.
hardcore Christian turned experimentalist.
Interesting.
Software developer, stand-up comedian, funny guy, good energy guy, loving
like
guy, cute guy,
Oh.
welcoming, friendly guy, great conversationalist.
This is all great.
Late coffee drinking guy,
Yeah, that's huge.
jumps into the deep end guy. And I don't know where this whole
clearly.
guy things come from, but there you go. That's my... What am I missing?
Yeah,
Oh,
no, all good.
Nudist guy.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we can go there then. Well, I mean, I wouldn't add much more to that. I think how do I introduce myself? I think I'm trying to like present myself as a cohesive thing, but I guess I'm made up of a lot of different explorations and things over time. But I mean, right now I'm doing a bit of a digital nomad thing. I'm a software dev. I'm a on again, off again comedian, music producer.
Yeah.
And
Missed that
yes, a background in the church. Yeah, but yeah, right now I'm kind of exploring a bit more of my embodied self, maybe, and like dancing, DJing, yeah, and just a lot of not a lot of partying, but like a more than not in my travels in the last year. It's been good.
And I also forgot to mention knows someone everywhere guy.
Oh yeah, right.
Doug's a man of connection.
I have had this in the past. I'll take it. I like it.
Yeah, it's a valuable one to have. Anyway, which of these topics most interests, or which of these topics would you want to, if you had to pick one to start to talk about yourself with, which one would you pick?
Interesting. Well, I think if we want to sort of travel back there, like I guess what you did say at the hardcore Christian was what came to mind for you at the start of your description. So I mean, we could go there.
Yeah, I think because it's such a surprise, or like, I don't know, I've never met anyone that's like really even that Christian at all, and to know who you are now,
Mm.
and to like hear like the way you're living your life now and all this stuff, or in the past like whatever how many years, but then like compared to what you describe of what it used to be like. By no means is like bad, by the way, to the people listening. It's just like a massive like juxtaposition, I think is the word.
Oh, totally.
And it's awesome. It's so cool, and I think it's for me at least, since getting to know you, obviously, it's like the way one would normally, that is a non-Christian, grow up and develop. They go through like their like teens and like early 20s as like the whole like partying, going crazy, like doing all these things that you probably don't do as a Christian. And then but you've almost like reversed that, so you've done it at a different time, and it's interesting because I think you always have a really 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 different perspective on basically like anything. And I think it might be that like might be the reason, right? Because like you're doing all these, having all these experiences, but as like a late 20s to early 30s, and it's like a much more mature mindset, and I love it. So
Great.
let's start.
I love the illusion of all these experiences.
Let's start from man, I don't know. You
Well,
pick.
okay. Church, I guess. Well, this is the thing. I think to begin with is like, okay, so I grew up in the church in Brisbane in Australia, and depending on who you are, like that, you may be picturing like choirs and organs and like priests and like church, but this is like the church that like world that exists out there is like, it's like youth group. It's like there are bands performing like awesome music, and it's like it could be really good music, and like, you know, young adults, like a lot of my like late teens, early 20s is like young adults, like Christian festivals. It's like that, like all the trends of like the 2000s, 2010s, like people like young adults hanging out with each other, hipsters, coffee culture, man buns, like beards, like they're all these like pretty cool, a pretty cool community of people. Was like a big part of like what it meant to be, to grow up as a Christian. So I think that's there to start with. You know, I guess because you say like there's like, it's interesting because there's these this like perception of like, you grow up in the church, you're gonna be like pretty reserved, and you're not really like going out, and like you're going out in different ways, but like there's a lot of community and a lot of like friends and hanging out and stuff. So, and that's something that I'm like kind of starting to remember more and more. There's a lot going on.
What? Okay, well, what would have been one of the worst things, most sinful things that happened, like that you witnessed at something like while growing up? Like if you're out with your friends, did someone, or do you have any sort of recollection of something happening that you could like identify as like, yeah, that was like at the time the worst thing that someone had done in this group,
in the like social groups?
Yeah. Because I want to try to find the line between Christian following the rules versus just stepping over the line.
Oh, yeah.
Not the rules. And because I'm sure there would be some, you know, some rascals doing some, maybe not though. Maybe everyone's just like super in line. So I don't know. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's because I guess I did paint this, you know, what it means to be in this sort of Christian community as being quite cool, but like, you know, it was still pretty conservative, right? And like, you know, there was still like, it was pretty repressed, it was pretty sheltered. It was like, you know, people are you know, there's like nights where, you know, it'll be you know, home group, youth, like young youth group, and maybe well, the girls go into like one room and the guys go into the other room, and it's like boys and girls night separate this week at youth group, and then the guys will just sort of sit down and we'll talk about like, you know, the problem of porn, and like, you know, all the guys would be just like, yeah, like, yeah, I struggle with porn, hey, and you know, and like struggle with masturbation, and so like, you know, there's still this weird like shame, repression, um, built into this community of kind of what otherwise you would look at as like a regular group of like young adults, or in youth group like, you know, high school students. But
It's interesting though, because I feel like like that wouldn't be a conversation that people would normally have. I think with their friends, like typically growing up, to be saying like, I have this problem, still have this like struggle with this whole porn thing, like it's difficult, or like masturbating thing, like that's because it's such a normal thing in general society. People don't even speak about it as if it's like not a good thing. And I don't know, it's interesting because you guys are like actually talking about some topics that are like, oh, well, this is like a real serious and legit topic, because I think now, at least at my age, I'm like, I completely agree with all of these things, you know, like that it's not good. It is a struggle. It's like it's just definitely not good, and you know, and yeah, I think it's interesting because now it's this whole like rewind, right? Like from my growing up, this is like the opposite to what you were doing when you were growing up.
I love
But,
this because it's like we're both, yeah, now we're sharing about, you know, the struggle of porn together. Now it's like, oh yeah, hey, it's interesting because I get like there is like a conversation about like porn, and like I think it's a pretty legit one about all the reasons why um porn is affecting society in this way, and that might not be good, that there's like, you know, other angles, which is like there's liberation in it, and of course like saying that porn is bad, or like if anything's wrong with it, could be kind of equated with a puritanicalism that way of
yeah,
like moved away from.
you're gonna have to explain what that is.
Puritanical is like being Puritan, um, being like what is like pure, you know, like the Puritanicalism is this the Christian being conservative and stuff like that. That you know still exists a lot in our society, I think. But how to distinguish this from the like the kind of the nature of these kind of young adults meetings and youth group where we're talking about porn. I mean, it's not just like, you know, you're not just saying that porn is bad, you know, as a trend in society. Like it's like every time you look at porn, like you're screwing up here, like and there's guilt and there's shame, and you know, depending on like the circles, like that, it could be like wanking. Also, like, you know, don't do it. No, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's sin. And so, like, I think growing up in that environment gives you a very very different sort of, I don't know, relationship with sexuality. That I guess I'm still deprogramming from in some ways.
Sometimes you just gotta let loose, Doug. Nah,
but this is like I mean, to answer your question though, like what is like the quote unquote sinful sort of like dramas going on in like these social groups, like I mean there's definitely like, you know, your church groups, church circles, like people might be hooking up a little bit, but I mean mostly mostly I didn't really know about it. Maybe like years later I hear about it and I'm like, oh wow, okay, like that's like happening, and like, you know, I definitely have like memories of like being real judgmental towards someone that like, I don't know, like they're you know, someone, it turns out that like two people that I knew were kind of like interested in courting each other for marriage and stuff like that.
Mm.
But maybe they like, you know, went to second or third base together, and then like
Oh, right.
I'm like, oh, that's so wrong. But then in me, I'm just like, that's so like I wish I like that was me, and that's like interesting to reflect on now.
Yeah, wow. It's yeah. No, I think also interesting going back to what you were saying before about porn and its impact on society, and also like that whole liberating thing. I don't know how. Yeah, I'm gonna say my opinion here, and I don't know how liberating it would be, or how liberating it is. I think sex is liberating. To feel like your body like fully in sexually in whatever, like that is liberating. But then the porn part is like, I straight up think porn is horrible. Porn is the devil, and like so many people I think don't even realize, or it's just like so normalized that it's like a bit scary to think about it, or even like, ah. I guess I went through this like sort of period of time of just like reflecting on like stuff that I like had liked or was interested in or whatever, and I just like going back to it's like, oh my god, like it's like not even really like it's sort of just all conditioned, right?
Mm. Mm.
And it's scary, I think, how much stuff in general, right, is conditioned. But I don't know. Have you found? I mean, we don't need to go there actually, but
No, I mean, I could share a bit about like I guess like my journey on the way out of Christianity was one. Well, I this was after so I left Brisbane and moved to Melbourne, and like wanted was looking at porn. Still a Christian, didn't want to look at porn. Thought it was wrong.
mm-hmm.
Um, did something that I used to think was like the scariest thing ever to me, which was to
No incognito.
in a way, I was going to say going to a therapist about looking at
All right.
porn, which was like, I think at the time to me like this huge admission to me being like, I have a problem with porn.
Mm.
But now I think I'm kind of like, I don't think it was a problem. I just think there was like a lot of like, you know, a lot to unpack around my life. And
Yeah.
I went to a psychologist who I still go to on and off today, like 7 years later. And I was like, I want to, you know, stop looking at porn. And he suggested, well, like, have you considered having sex? And I was like, well, interesting. I mean, in more words than that, but we kind of talked about like a lot of like sexual repression. A lot. I shared my faith, and my psychologist is also like used to be a Christian as well, so he had a lot of insight. But so yeah, okay, and then that whole kind of experience with my psychologist and unpacking
Mm.
a lot of shame and repression and stuff was huge for me. But he didn't he didn't say like, don't worry, like about looking at porn. He was still like, yeah, okay, don't look at porn as well. Like it's not good.
Mm.
Which
Mm.
is interesting because it doesn't come from it. You know, he didn't. He first sort of shared, don't feel shame, don't feel like this is the wrong thing, but it's not healthy. You know, so
Yeah, right.
that was really interesting to me as well.
Yeah, wow. Sounds like a good psychologist, actually, especially if you've been
He's
getting it
very
for
good.
7 years. But yeah, like, because I guess you'd also have like this whole sort of like build up of like not not that way.
Yeah,
If that's what
so
you're
much
thinking.
build up.
Not well, like also in that way, I guess, but not in that way.
Okay.
That's not the way I'm meaning. I'm more like build up in terms of just like I guess like wanting to have that, or like wanting to experience that, or like and haven't, or even like there's part of it that's like, oh, I know it's such a bad thing that I want to do it, and because it's a bad thing, like there's so much stuff that would go into that, right? It's interesting.
This is about like starting to have sex.
No, I was talking about like why getting into porn, like seemingly it seems in this story, but
Yeah.
it brings me back also to wonder. I mean, we sort of just jumped from like Christians telling each other about their porn or masturbating in youth group to like, you know, leaving. But like, why? What's the transition between then and the leaving? Like, why leave? Why let go of your Christianity beliefs, Christian beliefs? And yeah, I want to know why. Why did you do that? What were the things that made you, I guess, like open your eyes more, or just like experiment more, or venture further away from the nest? And then like, what were the things that really like pulled you out, if anything, like pulled you out? Because I imagine there was maybe like some pushing factors to get you out of there, but I'm sure there's also like some pulling factors to get you also out of there.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing is that I don't know if I ever really decided to stop being a Christian. I think that the as in, there was no point where I decided that I wasn't a Christian anymore. But I did. I'm not now. But like, there was more of a point where I kind of decided that I didn't want to try to keep trying to find a church and a community of people.
Right.
And you know, I'd share that I used to be a Christian and now I'm not, and then depending on like, you know, who they are, they may be really blown away by that. So often people ask, well, yeah, what made you leave? And really, like, I think that the answer is I moved to Melbourne. I left Brisbane and moved to Melbourne. That was really what did it, which is quite you know, passive way to think about it. But I think I grew up in a community of people, and I was surrounded by a lot of people that you know, there was really no reason to challenge my thoughts. In fact, there was probably more reason to not challenge my thoughts about Christianity, because my social life was built around it. And I think there's like also you know, I was in a bubble. So I was in Brisbane in a bubble. All my friends are Christian. That started to change a little bit when I left uni and I started working more, meeting people. And the more people that I met that weren't Christians, that were outside of church, the more I just loved them. They were people that were high functioning, non-Christians. They like weren't wicked, they weren't fallen, they're not like broken. This is one thing, like, you know, people if you are in church, people, I remember someone saying to me that they don't think if you don't believe in Jesus and you're not a Christian and you're not saved, like, you don't really know what love is. Like, you don't really know what love is, because, you know, God is love, and they don't know God. And so there's this perspective that people outside of church don't know how to love, they don't understand love, and all these like kind of like quite dehumanizing, subtly dehumanizing perspectives. I say that with like with love as well. Like, but I think people aren't dehumanizing non-Christians in that way. But certainly, like, I when I started to meet people outside of church, and find them to be delights, that I started questioning, well, what else is true about the world that I didn't realize when I was in church?
Mm. That's a good question to ask yourself.
And so would I moved to Melbourne, and I was there for a bit, and then I think really like things started to change when I started to get into comedy, and I joined improv comedy. It was not really something that I had thought about doing much before, but like I did a bunch of acting growing up. I was in like High School Musicals and theatre productions and stuff. So I was interested in improv comedy, and that opened me up to a new community of people, and it was like kind of my new church, which was like really
Nice.
like the same sort of people meeting in the same place every week, over a shared interest of comedy, of improv, and yeah, I think that gave me the space to question a lot about my faith and how important it is, and yeah, just beginning to realize that Christianity was a bit of a maybe like an unnecessary layer of explanation that to what I think otherwise at the time I was like, I feel like psychology is a field that kind of is a better way of explaining sort of the human condition and a lot of like things, which is interesting to think about. Why did I kind of maybe I saw Christianity more as like a framework to understand my mind.
Interesting. Interesting, because there would be a lot of different. I mean, there would be like so many different perspectives. There would be a lot of different Christians, right, that have different perspectives of Christianity and the way that they understand it and look at it, right? Because you'd have, I mean, these people who are like fully consumed by, I don't know the extremes of pro-Christianity, but I'm sure there's a massive spectrum of like how these different people are understanding and like taking in the information of Christianity, right? And like, what are they doing with it? Like you're saying, like using it as like a framework to understand your own mind. Like that's a pretty, like I'm sure there's a lot of Christians that don't even think like that, you know? They're just thinking like, God, Jesus, save me. That's just an assumption. But it, like I'm just trying to whip off of the top of my head like the most extreme. Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good take, or a good way to be looking at something, which is just like the implications it has for my own understanding of things, including my mind.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I hadn't until just like I mentioned it then, hadn't really realized that that's probably how Christianity was sort of sitting in my head. And of course, there were like different. There was like, and I could go into there's a huge arc in terms of like what my within Christianity, what it looked like in terms of like what Christianity was for me. You know, as a kid growing up was different to Christianity in high school, which was more of a social thing and a community thing. Well, I mean, but also like a huge, element. There was like obviously like times in my faith where it wasn't as much about the psychology and how it's like helping me view my mind, but like how to deal with like shame and repression throughout like my adolescence, which is wild to think about.
What would you, if you were to like explain to someone a way to gain all the benefits of Christianity, but not being or having to practice being a Christian? Like if you were to just like take everything you could of the positive ways of living like that and to just like tell me what to do, sort of like give me a little list of things or like instructions of like takeaways of like ways that maybe I could live my life, What would that look like?
Mm.
And yeah, take your time to think if you need it. Like, this is not a
This is
exam.
where you cut the cut the gaps in the recording.
No, we'll sit silence. People like it.
I think the first thing that jumps out to me, and this is, I think, this is definitely like just my own spirituality that I've formed here now. I think that Christianity, in the way that you pray like when people pray for things in Christianity. I say Christianity is such a weird way. I mean, it's like at church, but then I think so many different images come up for people at church, but like without being able to go, I think if people just Google, like, I don't know, like Hillsong United on YouTube, like you can see like what kind of vibe of church could be like. Not that that's exactly what my church was like, but I think Christianity and prayer and whatever whatever it looks like is contemplative. I think that was like a big part of like being a Christian brought out in me. So I think and that's something that I have liked to keep with meditation, journaling, and writing down my thoughts and stuff was something that, like, it was a big part of, like, not that that's really what you have to do as a Christian, or most people do, but like, I think just the practice of prayer that, like, gets built into you as a Christian is quite contemplative.
Can you actually, like, what even is like a Christian prayer?
Yeah,
because I know some stuff. I know, like, I don't, like, obviously there's like a lot of gratitude involved. I used to say grace at the table. I don't even know why, but I realized, like thinking back to it, I thought, what is this? What are we doing? Like, let me just eat. I don't care. But now I think about it, like, it's actually good, like sitting there being grateful for your food you're about to eat, for the many things that brought it here. Like, it makes sense, and it's like I think good practice. But that's like the only really thing that's like hopping into my mind when I think about like a Christian prayer, or like, please God, like, save my great grandpa or something like that. Like, that's my Christian prayer understanding right now. So, like, hit me with some.
Okay, let's do it.
Some juice.
So I think, like, in some ways you've got like, saying grace, saying thanks. You've got prayers where you are praying for something to happen, a good outcome, or an outcome to not happen, like praying for safety, or praying for this person to be healed, and maybe depending on, like, that, you might be really into praying for healing and stuff like that. But you also have this, like, prayer, and I feel like this is the sort of prayer that I would probably pray the most, which was like, I don't know, praying for the energy to study, or I'm praying for a wife. That's another big one. Like,
how does that sound in your head? How's it, like, word it out for me?
Oh, I don't know. You might be this line. This is fun. Like, God, I pray that I can meet someone to have a loving relationship and court and marry. Maybe, I don't know. You might. Maybe I pray that, like, before going to a young adults, like, event or something like that. That was a funny whole complex of mine. Praying to God for a relationship, rather than, like, I don't know, just investing a lot more resources in just improving myself, or reflecting on like who I'm like, I don't know, going for, or something like that.
Mm.
But so yeah, there's prayers that are. Oh, you mean? But then
Requests.
like, what's that?
Like there's requests. There's gratitude.
Requests. That one's more of a request, I think. But I mean, sometimes they're like more internal requests. Like, I guess what I was trying to say is like the requests that are like immaterial, like give me the strength to, love this person that I'm not loving right now, or basically what I kind of see him as is not that far off from what affirmations and like things like the law of attraction would teach you, or like the secret, like putting intentions out into the world, like writing down like affirmations, or just like saying things as though they're true and writing them down, and that I think is not exactly the same, and like Christians will not say that like they're anything like each other, but to me, and this is to sort of answer the question, like what would I keep, and what do I keep from Christianity, is this sort of like these sort of intentions that you can sort of ultimately be putting out when you pray for something.
Because you could imagine it's sort of just like you just replace the word God with like universe, right?
Yeah.
And it's just the same thing. Like that's actually interesting. You said before that you could pray for like the strength, or pray for the ability to love a certain person that you're not loving right now. And I can only imagine like maybe someone's done something that angers you, and it's like that actually takes you to recognize yourself as, I am angry towards this person and I want to do something about it, or I want to be able to change that and feel love towards that person. Like that's like quite an aware, like conscious state, I think, to be in. Like to even think like I'm angry at this person, and like to see it, right? A lot of people just get angry at a person and they still like, I'm just angry at that person. And there's no like objective view of it. But it's cool, because I mean, look, I've probably given Christianity a bad rap in my life. I'll be honest. I don't know, just like talking shit or something. I don't know, like just jokes about. I mean, like you just hear like Christian jokes, or like just the things you hear. And growing up, I always thought like religion's ridiculous. Like seriously, like I don't get the point of it. Like whatever. But now I've grown up and I've done like obviously like, as you know, like some like self-exploration type stuff and whatever, learning, reading, researching. It's like religion's really good in so many senses, I think. Obviously like there's this bit of tribalism involved, which is like probably the not great parts, but the deepest level of value and meaning and purpose that they're all sort of like getting at are like really real, really valuable, really helpful towards anyone. Like any person could gain value from Christianity, no matter who you are, right? Like the same as any person could gain the same probably value from like Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever other. I'm not going to try to say Zen, whatever. It doesn't matter. Basically, that's the point. That they're all sort of like providing that value, right? And across like the same, like it doesn't matter how the stories are told. It doesn't matter like who's taught or how it's taught. But if you like boil it all down to the very bottom essence of it all, it literally always comes back like the same sort of thing, same points, just in a different way. And I love it. Anyway, sorry, that was like a tangent ramble.
No, it's totally true, and I think that's like, I guess part of the complexity with growing up in church as a Christian is that there are like aspects to my upbringing, and like, I think, don't know if we mentioned this, but like into my mid-20s to like 27ish, like was still like considered myself a Christian. Like there's a lot of good elements to like being in that community, and like you say, like Christianity does, I think, compared to the average person, put you in a mode of self-reflection
Mm.
that is valuable. I think it's then like, I guess, the question of like, how do I then imagine like what would I wish for someone in their upbringing? Like, would I would wish for a lot of like the positive things from Christianity in someone's upbringing, but not the, like you say, the tribalism and stuff, and
Mm.
that's the complexity of not being. I'm not the sort of person, and these people are definitely like are around. I get like this like it's very common for people to have an experience in church that's like it was all bad, it was all traumatic, like, and I don't see any benefit to it, but I'm in the more tricky like situation where it's like I don't think there was like it was particularly traumatic. I think I was there like longer than many people that leave, and there's a lot of good things, but then there's like a lot of much more subtle, difficult things to overcome, and that's still a process I'm going through.
Yeah, I like you said before. It explains it really well, like an unnecessary layer, because like I sort of I can see how like there was definitely like that whole complete unnecessary level of just like stuff you don't even need. You just like sweep it to the side, and it's like still be taught the same values and stuff, and still gain. I mean, probably gain more benefit out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing, and this is the challenge I think with church is like I think is finding that sense of community, and like
Mm.
I guess if we're asking the question like how can you like have the good without the bad of Christianity, like it's hard to find a especially like if I'm comparing it to what Brisbane Christian scene in 2000s 2010s is like that's a hard sort of sense of community to beat, and the tribalism that we talk about is kind of what creates such a strong and sort of like consistent, cohesive community of people that are meeting. You don't go to church that week, someone's gonna like message you and maybe say like I didn't see you at church, brother, and like you kind of like you keep going, and like maybe it's as a result of um, being in a big bubble, but the bubble is comfortable,
Mm.
and that's like hard to find, I think, and I don't imagine that's just me and my upbringing that's struggling to find that. I think finding a sense of community for everyone right now is can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I'm interested also in the whole like, is there like a, I mean, I guess I've been approached by many people who are Christians, or I've seen Christians pushing Christianity onto people. What's that viewed like in the community? Like, is this a thing? Is this a thing that people do, but the general mass think like you shouldn't do it, or is it just like are these people coming to my door, or walking up to me on the street and like almost harassing me, to the point of telling me that I will go to hell if I do not listen to them? Are they outliers? Because I'm trying to also, for everyone listening to this, for the millions of people listening to this, I want to not necessarily give Christianity any means of a bad rap, and I want to sort of do it fairly, right? And yeah, I just want to know if are these like are outlier type people that potentially are identified as the general stereotype of Christianity. Laid on
Yeah,
me.
well, I mean, to begin with, like, I think in the conversation that we're having about church, we can distinguish from Christian spirituality, let's say.
Yeah.
As a general kind of caveat for that, as you said, like, you don't want to give Christianity a bad rap. There's like a sense. I think Christian spirituality is a very different thing to what kind of we're talking about in terms of taking Christian the teachings of Christianity and the way that it kind of connects you spiritually, like you say, to the same thing that everything else is pointing you to, which I sort of still think is something that can be quite beautiful and doesn't have to be connected to the tribalism and the traditions that most people think of when they think of Christianity. So what you said was interesting. There is a range of people in church, depending on who they are. I actually, so when it comes to people, you're talking about like evangelizing. This is like the term used for like if you're evangelizing, like you are spreading the gospel. You're telling people about Jesus. Look, it's a big part of it, and it comes in different ways. Like that, I actually like have dabbled in. This was I reckon this is crazy to me, but like in grade 10, grade 11, like this is like I don't know how old you were. Like this is like I don't know 16, 17, 15, 16. This in Queensland, like you're I'm like kind of getting real conservative as a Christian. Like I'm starting to like. When I say conservative, this is like there's like a part of Christianity. Maybe if you Google Reformed theology, that's like where you start getting it. But like it's about like it's the sort of people that are handing out gospel tracts on the street, or it's people like preaching in Queen Street Mall, which is the place in Brisbane that it would happen, and like, it was, and I got into this, and like, so I think for a couple of years I was like, I would go around and talk to people, strangers, people at school, like family members that weren't Christian, like I would be like, tell me like what you think about God, and like I would talk to them about the Ten Commandments, and this was the whole thing. Like this is in this particular part of Christianity was like, share the Ten Commandments and tell people that they're a sinner. Tell them that they're a liar, and here's the Ten Commandments. Here's all the like rules that God set that defines if you're a sinner or not, and basically get them to believe that they're a sinner, and then out of that tell them that they're saved.
Fear,
because Jesus died, and it's all about fear. Like it's definitely like you are honing in on the fact that they're a sinner. You're honing in on the fact that you're going to hell, and but then you're honing in on the fact that like Jesus can save you, and it's such a horrible way to like compel someone to become a Christian, and it was where I kind of hung out for a bit. It was like I don't know what it was about it that appealed to me. There was a like sense that it was more pure to the Bible. But no, this is like not. This is a small section of the church, at least the church experience that I had.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But then so this is evangelizing on the street, and kind of maybe one that gets a lot of airtime because it's like Flinders Street Station or something like that is like where it you might see it as well. Like this is like the image of like Christians, but
that's what a preacher is, right? Like a preacher is that what a preacher is?
A street preacher, yeah. A street preacher.
So there's a role. There's a role in the community to do this. It's a job.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, and like there's such a broad spectrum of Christianity altogether, but like at least I can talk to like the my experience of Christianity and like the places I see. Like most people that I would have met at church would not like the idea of a street preacher.
Okay.
That's like way too hardcore, and like it's off-putting. Yeah. It's like why would you make people feel guilty? Like like that's not gonna do anything. Like people are just gonna like hate you even more.
I feel like you have to spur their curiosity, right? To really get someone to look into it. I feel the whole fear thing. What's your hit rate? How many? What do you reckon your percentage of wins was?
My body count of people that I saved by handing out gospel tracts and like share like zero. Like nobody like became a Christian through that process, and that's pretty normal. Like it happens, but then the like it's who knows if it's effective. Like I think even the question of like is it effective or not is like I don't know. It's a weird question to ask because it's like I think in some ways it could be effective, but if it's effective, it's because it's like people feel real like you're tapping into like a feeling of a real feeling of shame, and maybe, like shame is effective.
Maybe it's just a confidence building exercise that they make you do, and they don't tell you, so you can go and approach people in the street, and you don't worry about their responses, and you have to keep a strong character. And maybe it's not for them; it's for you, Doug.
That would be quite the conspiracy. I was handing out flyers at Edinburgh Comedy Festival a month or so ago, and I was like, I know how to do this. I know how to like hand out flyers and get people's attention because I used to do it with the gospel.
If you don't come, you'll have a miserable night. You will go to sleep a sad sap.
Yeah. I didn't get the boombox. No, what is it called? Bullhorn. I don't know if people call it that, but that was the street preacher like bullhorn, or the speaker. I don't know.
I don't know.
And I can't remember the name of the speaker thing, but yeah. Okay, so.
Well, I wouldn't mind going from, because we've got a very nice transition from like our current conversation topic of Christianity, the church, the faith, the all that, moving to. Then we had a conversation a while ago about like, did you find that you may be having to like fill this spiritual gap with something, or we sort of touched on that conversation. But I would like to go a little bit more into like now, the sort of stuff you're doing now, your exploration, obviously with like all this embodiment stuff you've been doing, and things like what are some things that you're really stepping into now at this point in your life. And yeah, maybe let's just start there. Like what are the things that you sort of do now for like spiritual growth, I think maybe is the word, or satisfaction, or fulfillment is actually the word I was looking for. And yeah, like talk me and walk me through your current life.
Yeah, well, this becomes much more blurry in terms of like how I would define my spirituality now, but I think since leaving church, I think I certainly connected more to a sense of, Eastern philosophy, non-duality, the free will is an illusion, the self is an illusion, all this sort of stuff is like what ended up being quite comforting to me. For some reason, I think, since leaving church and as well as like, I think I got a lot out of learning, reading stuff by like Sam Harris. There's a podcast called The Liturgists that like were a bit of a post-Christian transition sort of podcast to like a lot of Eastern thinking. And so, I guess where that's brought me is like, appreciation of self-transcendence is the kind of, I guess, the word you could use. Like, trying to, I'm like valuing actions, activities, like adventures that challenge like who I am as a self. What ones that like don't make me kind of get in my head about like what's my brand, like who am I as a person, like what's my thing, like more just like I'm gonna start traveling and be a digital nomad and there's no really where I live, and like how does that like feel, and like what does that do to my sense of identity and self when I don't have a place that I actually stay and live.
Yeah, the whole identity. So challenging. So it's like challenging yourself, or like putting yourself in situations that challenge your understanding of your own identity.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah, and I think so I sort of say self-transcendence, but I think I like the idea maybe more of like self kind of expansion, because I think like you said, the embodiment stuff, I like to like include the body. I mean, this is like, I got introduced to tantric philosophy, sort of like white tantric philosophy, which is very, non-dualistic, and you're not your thoughts, but you're also like, I guess, like the philosophy of Tantra built in a value and appreciation of like the body and like the embodiment and experience of the senses and stuff, as opposed to something like transcendentalism, which was like, the body's like, really, if we could, like, we'd get rid of the body, and that's like such a thing. So, but like, I've got a lot out of this tantric way, and that's like introduced me more to just the joys of dancing, and so I got into ecstatic dance when I was traveling in Bali and Ubud, and that's kind of where I guess I started a lot of my traveling and adventures, and
So I love it. I love it all. I have a question though, like, two. So, which one should I go with first? All right, let's go. Why? I want to know, like, why do you, like, why is it that you want to, or why is it that you are challenging your own sense of identity? I know you sort of said like the self-expansion sort of stuff, but like, why? I'm curious to know like what's behind it all. And then actually I might as well just hit the follow-up question, which is what would you, or like how would you look, maybe you can answer this first, because they're not necessarily that related. It's how would you tell someone, or what would you tell to someone that maybe wants to do this sort of stuff, or has like this deep interest, but they're not listening to themselves and they're not putting themselves in the situations. Because I think for you, it's like you wanted to do this, you want to challenge yourself, and you just do it, right? I think a lot of people could be really like stuck in their own mind about actually doing it, or like actually stepping out of their comfort zone and making these changes that are really just like defining their characteristics and changing their identity and evolving them, right? So one, what would you tell? What kind of advice would you give to someone that's sort of like challenged with that in their own mind? Maybe you can speak from experience, like when you sort of started this sort of stuff. And then two, what is the deeper meaning as to why you're actually going for this like self-expansion, and like what is it?
Yeah, great. Two great questions.
Thanks.
Like, okay, so in terms of like if people feeling stuck, I guess if people wanting to, I guess it's we probably haven't quite articulated what it is that like I've been up to, but
Yeah.
I guess I had a regular office job until the middle of 2022, and I decided to quit. I thought something is exciting is coming up, and then so for a year and a bit I said I quit my job and I traveled to Bali again, and then packed up from Melbourne, moved to Portugal for 2 months, and now I'm in Berlin. And amongst that is a lot of, I guess, like, overcoming fear of, like, the unknown in terms of that, as well as, like, quitting my job and not knowing what work is next and stuff like that. And it is interesting talking to people about this, because, especially when I was leaving Melbourne, because people would share that like they would love to be able to move out and travel and stuff like that. I should qualify all of this with the fact that I'm like very privileged to be able to travel and work, and the specifics of what I've like been doing is more is like I'm lucky to be able to do it. But I think in whatever situation people are in who are sort of feeling stuck, I suggest reading the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway is a good book. I think that like basic sort of premise is that we have different levels of fear, and there's the initial fears of sort of not getting the basic needs that we need met. There's another layer of fear, which is the fear of what people will think of me, social situations, like I guess fear of like my image, and sort of fears that don't really necessarily exist as like real threats. And then the fear behind all that is the fear that you won't handle it, in that you won't handle whatever is being presented. And so I read that book, or at least the first few chapters, and started to take a bit more risks in the things that, in the sort of dipping into like a sense of uncertainty. And the more that I did, the more that I would find that I would handle it, and that gives you a sense of confidence to continue taking risks, and also the joy of taking risks and dipping into the unknown and discovering that it works out quite well, and that often the things that we imagine will happen to us are much worse than the things that do. So I think like that's what I'd suggest for people who been stuck or sort of been interested, feeling stuck or being interested, is like read that. But I guess I could also just generally suggest, like, you know, I've had a positive experience with therapy, so I just suggest people get talk to a psychologist if there's like, even just for like life advice. Anyway, but
is there anything you say, or because I guess I want to know, like, imagine it comes down to, we're in a situation and you're then faced with something. This something is now an opportunity for you to either get into it head first or to sort of avoid it, and getting into it is going to make you uncomfortable, and you know that it's potentially a fear. Is there anything that you do in your mind at that moment? Anything you say to yourself? Anything that you keep reminding yourself of? Because I know, and we can get a little bit more into like some of your experiences, which I've heard, and I think like I don't even know if I could do that, and so I want to know. And I guess I think of myself as someone who's like quite like willing to jump into the deep end. But that's why I want to know, like, what do you say to yourself? What do you tell yourself? What is the stuff that's going on inside of your mind at the time of decision to either jump in or to run away?
Yeah, so I think I have, I like the idea of, I guess this is a phrase that I hear quite a lot. I've heard a lot recently, is sort of exploring your edges and like exploring the edge of your comfort zone. And I think that things that feel uncomfortable and put you outside of your comfort zone a little bit, kind of explore those edges, and maybe then, and this is why I like the idea of self-expansion and expanding, because it's like I'm expanding the I guess the environments and circumstances that I feel comfortable in.
It's just true, actually, because I really like that. I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
Explore your edges, in quotes, Doug. But I really like it because it's like you only need to explore a tiny bit, even. Just a step out of your comfort zone, a little tiny bit further. And I think of Age of Empires. If anyone knows Age of Empires, when you explore the map, it's all dark and shadowed and you can't see it. And as you send one of your people out into the unknown, it uncovers the map and you can see more of the map. And all you need to go is a little bit further, just a tiny bit, and you'll slowly, incrementally, and then all of a sudden, after some consistent time, you will have an entire map of yourself uncovered.
That's amazing. It's amazing you mentioned that, because I have I use that analogy in my head as well a lot.
Age of Empires?
And we're from Age of Empires. Me and my friend will, if we're doing something new, we'll say to each other, it's black on the map. It's black on the map. We haven't been there yet. That's like an area we haven't explored. And like you say, it's such a good analogy.
Wow.
To go and yeah, I like it. I love it.
I didn't know. I didn't know you play. We got to play.
Dude, I'm trying to think. Did we not? We didn't. We never made that analogy to each other before. That's crazy.
No, I don't think we did. We'll play. We'll play with Fab, sure.
Yeah, sick.
We can get a serious lobby going. Anyway, let's just continue.
Yeah, and I think, this is, I guess, part of my current adventure is to try a lot of new things and to travel and see a lot of perspectives. Perhaps because I feel like there's a lack of that in my early upbringing. I mean, but I think that probably doesn't. That probably it's probably just everyone in ways.
Yeah.
Sure. Not everyone. I have a sense, and we both have a sense of openness to new experience, and that's like a big part of my personality, and that I guess that like life feels meaningful when I do that. But I think all this to say is like the idea of exploring things on the map is like just exploring it once, like you say, just exploring something that's like a bit out of your comfort zone and in a new environment is like enough, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a thing. You don't have to do it again.
It's funny. You also say like that. I mean, you reference it. Your situation be like coming from the whole like Christian faith sort of part, and like maybe like these reasons. It's like that's sort of why you've sort of come about this like whole like exploring and expanding. But like in reality, it's like most or a lot of people would be in some sense, in some form or another, in the same sort of boat, not just because of their like religion or their beliefs, but even like where they live, right? Like people could just be limited to like the life they know in the area that they live in and have never left Melbourne, and they don't know that. And it's like it's not just applicable to people who are, I guess like it's not just applicable for the part of you that's just the whole like religious aspect, but it's literally quite applicable to any sort of situation or environment that you're in that could limit you from basically anything comfortable, I guess. Anything comfortable. And then as soon as you're comfortable and you're not exploring, then that's the thing. So, but for you, I guess it was a change of religious beliefs or whatever, and location. But yeah, it's like, I also want to make sure that people listening can pull as much as they can from this, and not just like, oh yeah, but he was religious and now he's not. And like not be able to identify with it. I want everyone to be able to identify with this because it's literally applicable to every single person in some sort of way. Anyway,
yeah, totally.
Bit of a tangent.
I think, I mean, I mentioned that I think you're right. I think this is much more applicable to people, and that I tend to I guess use Christianity as a thing that maybe explains certain behaviors, in my life, but like, without necessarily a lot of reason to. But I guess like the other, but this kind of taps into your question before about like what's the why behind it, and I don't think
Perfect.
The like, why am I interested and resonating with this sort of idea of self-expansion, self-transcendence is probably a bit more to do with like my journey, I guess dealing with, this, I'm a special snowflake complex that many of us our age will like feel.
Can you explain that a little bit further?
Okay, so the idea is that we grew up in the 90s at this, or the like people in the 80s or the 90s grew up in this era of like self-esteem, the self-esteem movement, where kids would grow up and there'd be participation awards and everything that you were told as a kid as growing up is about like, you can do anything, you're special. And I have a very loving family and parents that were very encouraging. God bless them, and like very lucky to. But at the same time, instilled in me, I think, a lot of this idea that it left me thinking like, what's my thing? When am I gonna have a name for myself? When am I gonna be famous? And I think this is quite a common thing. And like you said, like much more relatable than being a Christian is this sense that like people growing up is in this with this built-in over expectation about what life will be like, and this is kind of the interesting point in time now I've heard people talk about it around about this time is the time where millennials are realizing how disappointing life is. And so for me, I think there's been a journey of I did music and music production. I did comedy, improv, stand up, produced comedy shows. I've thought about like being a blogger or being a YouTuber or like, you know, all these different things that feel like this will be my thing and this will be like my personality will be based around this and my identity. And as someone that has quite a like fluid concept of my identity in that I like lots of different things and I'm open to new experience and stuff like that, is never really kind of decided on anything. In fact, I think my personality is one that of much more of a generalist. And so the journey with that, and I think this is something certainly like that's come out for me post-COVID is trying something new, which is don't think about life as who you are and what your thing is and like that, but like realize and focus on the fact that like your concept of your own self is a bit of illusion. Like if you really kind of dwell on it for long enough, and certainly like your sense of like importance to define like your identity is also like an illusion, and at the same time, how incredible is it to just exist and be a human experiencing all the emotions that we experience.
Yeah.
And so that's that journey has definitely like motivated me to step out of my comfort zone, explore new parts of the map, because that's it gets me out of my head and it gets me away from this like, you know, quite exhausting pursuit of self-actualization in like this, what's my image and brand sort of thing.
Right. In that form of like identifying with something.
Yeah.
And instead just jumping out and identifying with experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not clinging to any of those any of those experiences. Right. Doug. I love it.
So I hope that's much more relatable than.
It's great.
Yeah, more relatable than you know how you grow up in church and then you want to like travel. Yeah.
No, well, we're getting the goodies out of you. There's so many more goodies though. That's the thing. That's the thing that people don't understand. We've only turned. This is like page 2 of Doug. Like,
that's
I'm gonna be realistic. This is like literally page 2.
The book of Doug. Yeah.
If there's a book of Doug. Yeah. But I would like, because we're on this sort of topic, and I didn't want to come in here like steamrolling with like your experiences, because you know you're not just a man of your experiences. But
true.
Obviously, like I want to get a little bit into the nitty gritty of your most confronting experiences that you've had to face potentially in the last year. I don't know, but walk us through some experiences that are just like real highlights for potentially pushing your comfort zone, getting out into this experience version of Doug, and walk me through like the process, I guess, of like how you did it.
Actually, is there a way to like pause and have a bathroom break?
Um,
How do you manage this, or you just edit it?
I can just edit this. You can go.
Okay, all right, okay, I'll be back.
Psst. Hey, you. Yeah, you. If you've made it this far, I just want to say a huge thank you. You have no idea how much it means to me, and I would love to express the immense amount of gratitude that I have for you. If you're enjoying the content so far, your support can truly help the podcast flourish. By simply subscribing, following, and liking and sharing, you're ensuring that our valuable content connects with the right audience, and it helps allow me to bring even more awesome content to you. Thanks again, and I really do hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and many more to come. Yo.
Yo.
I went to.
Oh, nice.
All right, so we were saying most confronting sort of what have been your most confronting situations or experiences that you have jumped into, and then like at the same time, like how did you sort of deal with that, and like what were you feeling, and just like explain it and walk us through like the experience.
Yeah, so I think like a big part of my recent journey with these sort of, so we're talking about what's like stepping out into the unknown of the Age of Empires map kind of look like. I think has come up with like I mentioned, traveling. I joined a startup that in tech that ended up being traveling around the world for, and being able to work remotely. And I think there was a pivot point in February this year where I kind of wanted to I needed to choose between a kind of running with this startup and traveling and adventure and uncertainty, or just going back to a stable job with like a consistent income and maybe still in Melbourne and stuff like that. Like, and I remember being very overwhelmed at the decision, and I think that was the start of me just sort of saying, well, I'm just gonna like try this, and I'm scared. I'm not sure about like the future, so I'm just gonna roll with it and see how good it could be. And I knew at the time that like it was a decision to likely become a digital nomad and start traveling around, and not, I guess, embracing the sense of I'm in a country right now and I don't know where I'll be after this, and being comfortable with the question of like what will come up next. And every time, I think maybe this will shift for me, but every time so far, like this is like I've been in a situation where I don't know what's next, and then what's next becomes amazing, and it's been exciting to go into the unknown and realize that it's like a delight. And so I think that's like, I think there's been like the biggest sort of like expanding sort of theme of my year. But then on top of that, there's been these sort of other experiences that I've explored, and we discovered a bit of this sort of stuff in Bali and Ubud, like introduced to like the tantric philosophy, and then there's these sort of like going down that path, there's these sort of tantric temple nights that are a thing that like people do in Bali, and there's a lot in sort of Berlin as well, which is they could be different things, but the one that I went to in Bali was a temple night where you were exploring your edges and feeling how you feel in these situations where like you might pair up and be like look into each other's eyes for like a couple of minutes at a time and feel the feeling of being vulnerable. Then there'd be sort of other exercises where you ask to, I don't know, you might be like, can I stroke your hair or something like that. And there's these like sort of intimate sort of exercises between, and then you like they say yes or no, and you learn about consent, and there's like these consent practices and stuff, and all like with the and the kind of core focus of these things, while they get like they can get kind of like what this one was like, there was like clothes are on, it's not like sex, but then people like there might be like cuddling, and it could be quite intimate in a way that's more intimate than you realize, that like that the focus of these things are like you have you get in tune with like what you feel in the moment, and you sort of the emphasis is like say yes if you want to say yes, and say no when you want to say no, and of course like emphasizing respecting whatever anyone says yes or no to, and also like tuning into like how your body feels when you say yes or no. So there's like this idea of it kind of exploring your edges, I think, is I could be way off here in terms of like what this community would say, but I think it's like practices that kind of teach you where your comfort zone is and where it's not, and what you're into, what you're not into, and that's like that's expansive to me in a way that it like stretches you into in those ways of like self-discovering.
What would you say is your, like, how would you sort of define your current comfort zone? Like, what are things that you've sort of like built to being a lot more comfortable with about yourself, or about just like things in general, and then like what are maybe some areas that are still quite uncomfortable for you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, nothing sort of particularly like comes to mind in terms of like what I think I'm uncomfortable with. I think that there's like definitely things that I think are probably more like in tune with like where do I feel more myself, and like that's like what I kind of am more interested in is in exploring is like what where do I feel like most myself, and that's I guess like what I'm kind of still exploring the most.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. Like, this is sort of just, this thought is popping into my head. It's like how I think of like trying to understand how much of like the way you feel you belong is how, like, I'm just sort of trying to like articulate a way to like say this, but it's like I think trying to like, there's communities and there's things that you can do and like groups of people and society and cultures and whatever, and then there's like that, and that's sort of got like this puzzle, this empty space for a puzzle piece, and then there's like the type of person that fits perfectly into that puzzle piece, into these sort of like grooves, into groups and societies. But then you have like, and I guess maybe I think of this because this is sometimes how I feel, which is like I am a different shape to a lot of these puzzle piece spaces, but part of me thinks that that's actually like quite a good thing, because it allows you to go around trying more of these different puzzle piece spaces that maybe you don't fit in, but you're like really seeing that your shape is not, there is no like set shape to be, it's just an always changing shape. And I don't know, I just think of it like, I don't know why I thought of it like that, but I don't know, it's just interesting because it's sort of like always changing, and like the way you view your things that like things that make you uncomfortable or things that you like, and it like obviously those things make you gravitate to or away from them. And yeah, I don't know, like do you feel like you're not necessarily a fit into anything exactly, or do you feel a little bit like you're bouncing around and you're just trying to not necessarily conform to these whole like these different spaces, but just continuously change?
Yeah, I think it's something that I like hugely identify with is this feeling of not belonging anywhere.
Mm.
Um, and I think there's a few things. I mean, one like the first thing that came to my mind is like how like quite globally common it is for someone to not feel like they belong in like that puzzle piece. Is there a perception that like most people are fitting into that? There's also like people that will get a sense of safety by fitting into things like certain images and stuff, and so that don't necessarily and that's working for them, or maybe they deep down just run with it. But
I guess just quickly, like, I guess it's also sort of like the very thing that comes with this like level of self-exploration and testing your exploring your edges, uncovering your map, is realizing that like I actually don't know if I do like this thing that I do, or I don't know if I actually do enjoy doing these things that I do. And so you start to question yourself as you explore more of yourself. You start to question more of the things you do, and then you realize that you've just been doing things and like hanging out with people and whatever it may be. And so it's sort of like this weird like cycle of maybe you can feel like you belong before you've really put in a lot of time and effort into exploring and understanding yourself, and then you start doing that, and then you then realize like then it almost like pulls you out of belonging, which then maybe in the long run it does turn you back into a much more fulfilled, liberating belonging. You know what I mean? I feel like you know what I mean.
Yeah, and no, it's so good because I think like you're kind of tapping into what I feel like is probably like the process that I am like going through is exploring, like casting a wide net of many different things and experiences, and meeting lots of people in different ways and different communities and stuff really does like open you up to new like options to paths to take, I guess, is like a way to look at it. One thing I think that like that's like sort of on this topic, the thing that I'm kind of like leaning into the most right now, or like is on my mind, is articulating my core values and using values as like a shortcut, like a short circuit into decision making as to like what you want to do with life. Like in this is something that I've kind of realized that people know what values are, and like you want to work toward your values. Values give you like, if articulating your values gives you like a sense of meaning in life, and it's a very established thing in acceptance and commitment therapy, which is another great thing to explore. A book called The Happiness Trap is really good for learning about acceptance and commitment therapy. which basically is like, combination of mindfulness, accepting your thoughts, and then committing to your values and sticking with them throughout, like whatever emotions and thoughts that you may wrestle with toward them. But I think, that my focus is and kind of the new way of me kind of understanding values is that, like, they don't have to be anything true or real. They don't have to have any kind of like spiritual or like kind of mystical truth to them in terms of like what your values are, but leaning into like what you value as a way of just knowing that, puzzle piece that you kind of belong to, and it's and then you kind of realize, well, there's no real puzzle piece and like community to belong to. It's really just like what activities and communities and choices I can make that like line up to what you value.
Well, in saying that, because I guess we're sort of talking about then like the belonging with the puzzle pieces is like belonging, but then like where, and this is I'm just like throwing this question out there. It's like, where then do you start to feel belonging if you are? Do you know what I mean? Like, where do you start to get the sense then of belonging if you're just not fitting exactly to places? Or is it, I mean, I think I would probably just answer this myself. It's just a much more fluid and flexible thing, and like a bouncing around, and it's actually becoming the comfortable with the bouncing around, and I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I think that there's it because I've, in terms of the kind of pieces and the communities and like the image and maybe like my identity, that's bounced between Christian, it's been musician, it's been comedian, it's been like software developer, it's been all these sort of different things, and none of them really kind of like fit into this kind of cohesive kind of image that's like easy to present to the world. And I've like often, thought to myself, well, what is it about this like this temptation or this like desire to like be able to like concisely articulate my identity in order sort of like kind of combine all these things into something that like makes sense and cohesive. And I'm sure there's like lots of good and beneficial reasons to like have that, but I think also just like sitting in the, in the maybe discomfort with the fact that like our personalities and who we are made up of lots of different things, and like the in terms of like how we present ourselves to people is a very fluid thing.
I wonder if you could. Oh no, go on.
But I guess you were asking in terms of like what the like how you might find community in that.
Yeah, I guess I was sort of pushing at or trying to just think about like maybe look, yeah, I think you're right. Just community and like finding community in that sense of like belonging, because then I just wonder sometimes like is belonging, because it's sort of an interesting one, because it's like belonging then can kind of like into comfort, and then comfort turns into like not pushing your boundaries and not like getting out there as much. And then I wonder like how much of a benefit is even belonging. It's like all you might need is to just belong for yourself, and then the rest of it doesn't matter. So like how important and how valuable actually is it to feel like really that much belonging with like groups and societies and these cultures? Because like, could that not just limit you in some sort of way? I don't know, this is just some random questionable thoughts, but
yeah, well, I think my life has been made up of like lots of very like niche little communities,
Mm.
and I think that that there's value in that, like the different communities that I've spent time with have like seen different parts of me.
Mm.
Um, uh, but I guess the other like element of all this is like how much does your surroundings, how much are we like a product of our surroundings, right? And like you alluded to the concept of our like identities not being fixed and being fluid as well. Like yeah, I think that there's a whole kind of interesting world of like thought as to like, well, how much does like this is an interesting thing that I like heard like I don't know a few years ago, and it's always like maybe actually 5 years ago, because the idea of this TED talk that I listened to was that like we always think that we are like the final form of ourselves.
Mm.
And like they did this study where every 5 years they would interview the same people, and they would say like, what are you into, what do you like, what are your kind of worldviews, what music do you listen to, and
Mm.
they said it's this. Then 5 years pass, and you ask the same people, and they're like, oh no, I'm like completely different now, I'm listening to different music, I'm like doing different things, and like they thought that was like that wasn't going to change, and then they get asked this question again, and they're like, this is what I'm into, and I don't think that's
Mm.
changing. And then another 5 years pass, and it changes. So and so there's this illusion um, that like we are kind of the same person and not like sort of constantly changing.
Yeah.
Um,
Sort of like if it's sort of like we look at and we view ourselves as a rigid shape or puzzle piece. We'll keep going back to that, I guess. And
yeah,
we're viewing belonging as like this shape, but in reality, it is not a fixed shape and it is fluid. So I think maybe there could be like a lot of difficulty and conflict for people because they're imagining what they view of like belonging and what I should feel and sense and all this. They're viewing it in a fixed form, but in reality, it's not a fixed form and it's just a fluid form, and like always changing. So like, of course, you can never feel then like you're really belonging or like yourself or happy with it because it's impossible. You're trying to fit something that is unfittable.
mm,
You know, if that's a word, unfittable. Jeez.
unfittable. I guess yeah. The well, what's the kind of this concept of like the puzzle pieces and like fitting in? Do you think is that an analogy for someone who has found like their thing, or like their kind of
I guess it's
identity, or like their people, their like community of people and connection?
maybe all of those things. Because even if you found your, can you ever find your identity?
Well,
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, can you really ever find it if it's always changing? You could think you could find it. You could think you see it
yeah,
as it is now, but like, what even you don't even have like what even is an identity? You're not an identity is like nothing. It is a makeup
yeah,
of the things of the things you feel you like to reflect from the things that you've experienced. But
mm,
like, so like, but it's, but then you always get those people that'll say like, you know, they're set on it. They're set on like, this is my belonging. This is what I do. This is what I like. But there's like at the same time, they're the same people that are just like completely clinging to this identity of themselves that is just like they're a product of their environment of what they've experienced. So I don't know. Like I ask these questions with no real like intention or just thoughts really rattling off my brain. But I don't know what I meant by it. I guess I feel like maybe sometimes I see that. I felt it in myself before, and I see it in a lot of the world around me, of like people. It's weird. It's like I can almost see someone feeling their belonging, but they're not feeling their belonging. Thinking they're belonging, but they're not feeling belonging. Like, it's weird. I don't know if you understand that, or if you've ever kind of experienced like that. You could see that or feel that from someone, where like you can literally. I just think about like drinking, right? Drinking and drugs. In that environment, it's like that was me. I felt like this is my shit. This is my jam. This is what I was doing. This is the people I was hanging out with. But then I realized, like, oh my God, like, I don't even like any of that. It's just the substance in me that liked that thing, or the substance in me that liked these experiences. And it was never actually me, whatever that is. But, and I don't know, to see that, and like, you can still see it, and like, you can see it like everywhere, I feel. And I don't know, that's just like the frame of mind of myself, that where that sort of puzzle piece thing came from, to answer your question in a very long-winded way.
No, yeah. I guess is that, and then I guess that ties into this like question of like these people who, like, let's use the example of like the people that just drink and take drugs and that's it. Like, what does it take for that sort of person to then expand out of that in?
Well, but then when you start to get on, it's funny because this topic in this conversation gets into a lot of areas really rapidly.
Yeah,
and it can turn from the person who's got the mindset and the point of view to look at themselves and like question themselves, right? And to grow and get uncomfortable and change, explore their edges. But then you've also got like these people that are in this position because of pain and hurt and things that have happened to them, or like the coping mechanisms and all of this stuff. There's like, so like you almost can't generalize, I guess, because it's just like not the reality of it. But it really just gets into a whole universe, of lack of a better word, of things.
Yeah, we hit the universe as a topic. 2 hours in. Yeah.
with a bathroom break.
Yeah.
Bathroom break. Oh my God.
There's a cat.
Bathroom. I feel like I don't say bathroom anymore, but anyway, toilet break, whatever.
Toilet break.
But yeah, I don't know. Like it comes from these like. It's interesting. It's also interesting to think to ponder. Because then you also then start to ask. This is what I do, right? This is what I think that I feel is probably like I feel annoying to people, because I'm always asking them questions about their life and like I basically ask like, who are you? Like, what do you do? What is your life? Like, tell me what you know about yourself. Because that's what I'm interested in, like all these questions I'm asking you, it's because you know stuff about yourself and you've explored yourself and you understand that. But then you get to this point where people don't even know. They don't know. And I would love for, at least for anyone listening to this, like for you to even question like yourself and your own identities, right? To all of you millions and millions of people out there.
Millions of followers.
Yeah. How would you get, what would you say to someone to maybe pull them out of that trance? Or say, what would you say to someone to get them to really question themselves? Because you gotta also consider like people's strong identity with the ego, where they would say, I do question myself. I know who I am. And there's no telling me wrong. So what would you say to someone like that? If anything at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess if people are listening and they I guess it really does depends on where anyone would be at, but I think if someone's in a position where they are wanting more in life, say, like, and if we could like take that angle, what I'd suggest to people, as someone that has found more in life, I guess you could say, and maybe this is a bunch of survivor bias, but like, I think well, anyone listening to this probably is already across mindfulness, meditation, connecting with like the present moment, understanding that they're not their thoughts, finding values in life that like give them meaning, trusting that those values don't have to like make sense to be effective, but working toward your values will make you feel more alive, and not necessarily happier, but more alive. I think fear. I think by kind of my outlook is that like whatever situation people are in, like if they're living in fear, it's never good, and that like what overcoming fears and like stepping out of your comfort zone looks like is going to be like very different depending on what people are into. But like I think I get a lot of value out of the idea that you can't really kind of trust your brain on fear, that like we're also like all in like a bit of a state of like hypervigilance. I don't know if this sort of like you know much about this concept, but like we're stressed. There's so much distraction from social media, technology. We keep sort of running to things that kind of make us feel better. There's like just base levels of like cortisol in people's systems, and their nervous system and stuff is like kind of like we're all in a. I had this good analogy that like if people are in like dealing with trauma, and it doesn't have to be like you don't have to think of it trauma as this way, but if like in many ways we're kind of all just like living life in a way that's like a gazelle being chased by like a lion, the like this is my friend Wasi Roots and Wings, if you find her on Instagram, because she did a really good workshop and talked about this analogy, is that like we don't want to be like this gazelle being chased by a lion. That's basically how a lot of us kind of feel when we're like constantly overworked and stressed and tired, but that we should like try to find more resilience, like a tree with deep roots and something like that. Like,
yeah, right.
I'm rambling a little bit, but I think like we could talk a lot about I guess expansive activities and things that like kind of put you out of your comfort zone and grow you and stuff like that, but like for anyone that might feel sort of stuck, but also I think like the more direct need is for people to be able to regulate their nervous system, calm down, get some space, and be open to their intuition as to like what's next.
Yeah, that's a good one. Being open, so important. And intuition also. It's like a sort of a running theme. I've spoke to a couple of people that we've all mentioned intuition.
Nice.
Do you think there's this is a conversation I had with some people the other day, but the topic is sort of like, do you think there's like a consciousness shift, like a consciousness expansion shift in the general like, just in humans in general? Do you think the younger generations and even our generations and the following generations are, like, do you think there's much of a like a conscious shift there? And like what do you feel like that, what could that even look like, Doug?
Mm. It's I mean it's a very interesting question to me, from the perspective of someone that I grew up in church. I was a Christian. There was like the atheist movement, right? Like when I was in high school, and like universities, and so like being in church, we always thought like the alternative to sort of Christianity, or like church is dying. Like, what are people gonna believe in? Like when everyone leaves church, like what's like the new kind of what's replacing religion and stuff like that. It's always been kind of interesting then to me, and like I think that like it's incredible to see like so much of how much like the concept of just mindfulness has like entered like the mainstream, and I don't think that that's necessarily like a replacement belief system or something, but it is definitely like I think such a good improvement to what like where society is going. And I'm just thinking if there's like a the 50-year vision of like what where we start heading with mindfulness, and I think like just base kind of concepts of like you're not your thoughts, like this is like having like more of a grounding in understanding of mental health, how our brains work, with motivation, with addiction. Like I think in terms of like that sort of conscious shift, I think is like that's one that I'm excited about, and I think would take us in good places.
Yeah, I think it's funny, right? Like I think like the internet, having all of us having phones and instant access to everything in the world, and the internet and whatever, gives us the opportunity to learn and to understand and discover all of this stuff that I think actually can help us become more conscious, more self-aware, whatever it is, like the content you consume, all of that. But then at the same time, that same sort of thing is feeding that whole problem of feeling like a gazelle all the time. So it puts us almost like back in this weird like position of like good and bad, like cycle of like, but then that brings actually about this whole, then you need to be really conscious. It actually tells you need to be really conscious of how you are operating in your life, and the things you make your decisions about. So I guess in like in short, like I reckon like there's a massive, and will continue to be a massive like conscious shift over time, right? It just only makes sense to me. I just think about like even being like health conscious and like health conscious, like the first one, or like even all this reusable recycling. We got rid of plastic bags, and then people started to talk about the environment, and it's like people have been talking about the environment and being healthy for a long time, but like not in the scale and reach of the internet,
Yeah.
So it's really cool, really interesting stuff. But I want to know, change of topics. What have been your best two? Well, I guess we'll say one. What's been your best memory so far this year?
Wow, that's tough. There's been too much to to think about. living in Portugal with you for 2 weeks.
Oh, Doug, you can't. You can't. It's so kind. It's not what I was looking for, by the way. I wasn't looking for anything related to
I
me. But
know, I know, but it came to mind maybe because I'm talking to you. But I did write down some highlights of my year last night as I was trying to kind of synthesize my my mind for this podcast. But and that's a highlight of Portugal for sure.
beautiful. That's awesome. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think like that was such a sick experience. So good. I actually have just another question came up because I was sort of like trying to taper this off, but
Yes.
I got another question, which is we haven't spoken at all really about software development, coding, developing, engineering. That's like a whole. See what I mean by when I say page 2? Like this is like maybe we're at page 4 or 5.
True.
But like we don't. This could be for another. Like this whole topic, I guess, could be for a whole nother conversation. But I'm interested to know this. Right? Is how much do you think your logic and your learning and problem solving abilities that you've acquired through coding and developing and engineering and all of that, like what kind of impact has that had, do you think, on your life? And not just mean like as a job, but I mean like quite literally, have you been able to then learn those skills and apply that logical thinking and problem solving ability in areas of your life that you think you would have otherwise struggled with if you didn't have? Because I mean, as you know, I've obviously started to learn how to code and develop stuff, but I just see like there's so many more benefits actually to it than like having a job, you know. So I'm curious to know like what you think, if you've ever thought about that, or if not, you could just not answer.
I mean, I remember when I was first learning to code, I could apply coding to like all different like aspects. No, I'm not imagining. I can't remember any specific like broader aspects, but I'm just like seeing code and functions and everything. I think that's an interesting question. I don't have like any like specific things. Although just thinking out loud, like I think like I like to think in terms of systems, and like I think coding maybe is an element of like that. Maybe drawn to it, or maybe as a result of it. But thinking of things in systems and like logical flows of like cause and effect and stuff. When it comes to like how I kind of view the world and how I view society, I think. Yeah, I think that's we can go on. We can do a whole other topic, but like I think
Well, then I have. You've spurred another question in my mind, which is what is the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself as of lately? I guess. What's something you've surprised yourself the most with? And it could be in literally any field, any dimension.
I think like there's it's a whole other thing, but like I mean I've been surprised at how much I like dance and sort of anything that sort of gets me in my body. I think that's like a new kind of little realization to me, and maybe this has to do with a like background in software coding, engineering. It's very cerebral. It's very in your head. There's probably a lot of like I don't know, in like a somatic sort of way, like, you know, emotion trapped in my body, and like, you know, dancing and embodiment practices and stuff have been like surprisingly rewarding for me. Um, I think that's also like there's like an element of, you know, my upbringing as well that like, you know, probably takes you out of your body as well. That's like another thing.
Mm.
So I've been surprised. And that's as someone that I think is like just did not think that that was my thing. I guess like
Yeah.
I've been, you know, thinking there's that like, you know, kind of concept of like yourself changing, and what you like might change quite a bit, and you can't predict it.
Yeah. That's good. Coming back to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look. Before we depart, or before we end this, unfortunately, like we're gonna have a lot more of these, I think, but because we didn't even talk about comedy, Doug.
Comedy, yes.
But we'll leave it for now, because this is it's getting late actually for me. Our time zones are not working.
You've got other comedians ready to go on here.
Yeah, but maybe not just about the comedian. It's about the mind and how your experience of being a comedian, which we can talk about another time. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But I want you to imagine that you have what was that thing you said before that the preachers had on the street, that like
it's called a bullhorn, at least in America, where it's like you hold it and it's like a speaker.
Yeah, okay. Let's imagine you have an extremely large bullhorn, right? And you're holding it here, and that is going directly into the ears of 1 million people. What you have less than 30 seconds, and then your chance is gone. What are you saying into that bullhorn?
Oh my god. This is harder than the question of what my favorite memory was of the year. I think like this is what comes up for me, and it's a quote from a comedian that was quoted in this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is like, there isn't any evidence to suggest that life is serious.
Mm.
You know, it like, you know, the ultimately we are like on this planet, on this rock, you know, we don't really know what it's all for. And like being comfortable with that is a good gift.
I love it.
That's my bullhorn 30 seconds.
I love it. It's crazy how it's like you can really think about that. Like when you actually think about, like, we're just on this rock thing, like hurtling through space. Hurling or hurtling through space?
I don't know. Yeah, hurtling.
Hurtling.
Sounds right.
Hurtling. Okay. Hurtling through space. God, it just doesn't sound right.
No.
But like when you think about it on that scale, like a universal planetary scale, nothing fucking matters. You know? Like literally nothing is worth the fuss, or nothing is worth like the pain or sadness or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. On that scale, nothing matters. And I like that's what came up for me when you said that, and I like it. Thank you.
Yeah. The best way I've heard it put is that like conceptually nothing matters. Experientially everything matters. You know, there's
God, you're full of good
a lot
quotes.
of of concepts, you know, in the grand scheme of things don't matter. But experientially, and what we experience in the present is like hugely profound.
Yeah.
And I think that also like, you know, it's important to qualify that, like, you know, so the grand scheme of things, nothing matters. You know, if people are in difficult situations, that is like, that matters.
Mm.
You know, if people's experience of living right now is awful, then that's awful.
Yeah.
But I think I apply it to, like, you know, things like my sense of, like, what who am I, like, what am I gonna do, where should I live, all that stuff is like, it, like, don't take it seriously. It's like, no, it's all a bit of a game, isn't it? This is all a bit silly, you know, all the stuff that, you know, that I'm doing.
Yeah. It all is. It's enjoyable as long as it's enjoyable. Yeah.
And I think that's like when you say like that these sort of concept of like the puzzle piece and finding a sense of belonging, having like a sort of idea of like identity that's fixed, all those things, you know, like, that's like, I can get caught up in these things and only like realize it's like, this is all, you know, life's not serious in that way. But then you got to hold that in tension with the fact that, you know, there's a lot of serious stuff experientially going on that's like, you know, important to recognize.
I love it. Doug, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here and being on the podcast.
Yes, dude.
It's been so great. As per usual. God, what else do I need to say here? Look, you get it. I appreciate it heaps. Like, legit.
No, it's been great. Yeah, excited to hear it, and excited to hear the other interviews, and see this podcast flourish.
Thank you.
This is where I promote all my like channels.
Yeah. This is
where you can find me. I don't really have anything.
No, do it.
I'm MMMM Doug on Instagram. That's 4M's Doug. That's probably, you know, where you could find me.
Do you have a YouTube?
No. I have a little bit on YouTube, but that's it.
Do you have an address? Maybe if anyone's in Berlin.
I don't actually. It's famously no address right now. And not even a functioning phone number.
You don't need it though. You got WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You just use. What's a phone number anyway? Unless you're in Bali, you need one there. Or maybe you don't actually. No, you do. Anyway.
Yeah.
I probably would have cut this already. But maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe there's going to be a little surprise in it. Who knows? Just keep
maybe cut the my Telegram, come to think of it.
I can cut it at Doug.
Yeah, nice.
Dude, this has been awesome.
Yeah, dude, so good.
So great to talk again.
Do we do a debrief?
Sure.
I feel like I want to catch up with you like off the record for other things as well.
Yeah. No, I can stop the recording actually. So stop.